Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Well, you know I'm in love with the whole microbiome. We've done so many shows on this, dating back to the old Amish gut study and everything we've done in between, looking at the different type of microbiome that is developed based on your geography, your diet, and it just gets deeper and deeper. Even the last couple shows we've done where we talked about ketogenic diets, we talked about the endoplasmic reticulum and how it's affected and the microbiome is affected by it. I mean, the discussion, we realize now that the microbiome is so tightly woven into our physical condition, it's scary. And my next guest is Dr. Martin Blaser, and he just wrote a book called Missing Microbes, How the Overuse of Antibiotics is Fueling Our Modern Plagues. Welcome to the show, Dr. Blaser.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So let's dive right into this. Antibiotics are probably one of the greatest contributions from medicine. More lives have been saved because there was a period of time where plagues were caused by infections, and pretty much very few people die from these types of infections any longer thanks to antibiotics, right?
Antibiotics were miraculous. They really started in the 1930s and picked up steam by the 1940s, and we've been living under an antibiotic umbrella ever since, and they have saved countless lives.
So where did it go wrong? When did too much of a good thing happen?
You know, it's like going to that buffet. The food is so delicious and there's so much of it, and you just keep eating and eating. So people, because antibiotics were so miraculous, doctors and scientists everywhere were thinking, well, can we improve this condition with antibiotics? Can we improve this condition? And little by little, more and more were being used, not just for life-threatening illness, for milder and milder illnesses. And one of the cases, very common cases, ear infections that kids get. These are very common infections. We know that 80% of them are caused by viruses, and antibiotics don't even work for viruses.
Right.
But when a baby goes to their doctor's, a parent brings a baby to the doctor's office, with an ear infection, 70% of the time they're walking out with an antibiotic prescription.
But now, I don't want to lay this all at doctors. Look, my audience, if they could shout out right now, they tell you that I am very vocal when medical orthodoxy gets it wrong. But at the same time, I have to say that I kind of feel like doctors were placed in between a rock and a hard place, because when parents would bring their child who's in distress for whatever the reason, and even though the doctor knew that the first line defense was not necessarily antibiotics, they felt compelled to give something that would, quote, do no harm, because the parents expected, don't just send me home with a sick child and tell me to wait it out. I could have did that without coming into your office.
So you are exactly right, and that's why I wrote Missing Microbes, because part of the responsibility is with the doctor and part of it is with the parents. But in both cases, everybody's kind of missed the boat, that everybody has assumed that antibiotics have no cost, that there's no biological cost to being on.
Right.
Occasionally there are short-term consequences. Rarely there are serious allergic events, but really, really rare. Nobody thought that antibiotics could affect things down the road. Everybody thought you took an antibiotic, you might have a little distress, and then everything would bounce back. That was the belief. But in fact, there wasn't really any data to support that. And we now know more and more evidence that that is not the case, that there are changes to the microbiome from antibiotic use, and there are long-term consequences, especially when antibiotics are given to young children.
I stayed away from antibiotics, except the antibiotics I was probably given as a child. Once I was an adult, able to make my own decisions, I navigated around antibiotics, not really intentionally early on until I became a little more educated, until the year 2008. In 2008, I had an abscess, and the dentist said to me, I can't do anything with this tooth, which needed to be root canaled, until we get the infection under control. And I reluctantly took a sulfur-based, I think it was amoxicillin.
That's a penicillin-based antibiotic.
And so now understand that I had been at that point in my life, as I always have, a very, very hard training, probably more of an athlete than an average person, even at 55 now, and which required me to consume lots of nutrients to keep my body strong and recovering. And I've never had a digestive problem that I can think of until when I was very young, I got food poisoning, and for a short period of time after that, my stomach didn't work very well. But I've always bragged that I had a cast iron stomach. Fast forward to this short duration that I was taking this amoxicillin. Within the first couple days, I noticed that my food was just lingering in my stomach, and I was belching all the time. And I immediately stopped taking it within 3 days, but the damage had already been done. My stomach was not back to normal for 4 years. For 4 years, I had to take steps, use prebiotics, probiotics, colostrum. I tried everything, large doses of L-glutamine and so on and so forth. And today, my stomach is back to normal. But that short bout of exposure changed my digestive system. It was unbelievable.
Right. So your sad case illustrates my point. And you're already an adult. Your body is all formed. What if that had happened when you were 6 months old or a year old, and your microbiota was forming? It was kind of forming its long-term population. It would have changed the formation of that and had effects on the development of your metabolism, your immunity, maybe even the development of your brain. We've been doing studies in mice that show that early life antibiotics are changing the development of mice. They're making mice get fatter. We're changing how the immune system is what kinds of cells are constituting the early immune system. So that's why we study mice. We can't do these studies very easily in people, but we can very carefully control the situations and show it's the antibiotics that's doing this.
Okay, we have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I've got lots more questions. The book is called Missing Microbes: How the Overuse of Antibiotics is Fueling Our Modern Plague. If you spend any amount of time sitting while at work like I do, I have the chair for you. The Backstrong chair from All 33 is the most comfortable office chair I've ever sat in. That's the truth. Their patented technology allows your body to move the way it's supposed to move while you sit. Designed by a chiropractor to position your pelvis in a way that stacks all 33 of your vertebrae into perfect alignment. The benefits of this ideal posture include relief of back pain, deeper breathing, better digestion, improved circulation, greater focus, sharper memory, and more productivity. Start experiencing these benefits today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/move and use the code SHR100 for a $100 discount on your Backstrong chair. Attention meat lovers. I've discovered a snack with just 2 ingredients, meat and salt. That is so tender and delicious you almost can't believe it. That's right, no soy, sugar, or other crap. Our partner, Carnivore Snacks, nailed it with these mouth-watering snacks. They have a variety too: ribeye, pork loin, leg of lamb, and more, all sourced here in the USA from regenerative farms. Claim your superhuman offer from Carnivore Snacks today at shrnetwork.biz/snacks. That's SNAX. Use the code superhuman for 15% off your first order, plus a free 2-ounce pork loin. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. I keep saying the number one killer is insulin resistance. Managing blood sugar is the key to living long and aging well. But we all like to eat starchy carbohydrates and sugars from time to time. How do I manage this? I use a product called Blood Sugar Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This easy-to-take supplement is the result of numerous tests to find the absolute best formula for maintaining healthy blood sugar. Blood Sugar Breakthrough works to safely lower blood sugar after meals so that you can maintain a healthy weight and redirect carbohydrates to your muscles where they can be burned as energy. This means you'll avoid the worst effects of high blood sugar, like weight gain and advanced aging, while enjoying more stable energy, mental clarity, and fewer cravings. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blood sugar and save 10% with code SHR10 today. Is there something interfering with your happiness or ability to achieve your goals? BetterHelp can help. They will assess your needs and match you with a licensed therapist. This is not a self-help or crisis line. It's professional counseling done securely online. They have a broad range of experts and are available worldwide without having to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. Get the help you need and start living a happier life today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/betterhelp. That's better, HELP, and receive 10% off your first month of counseling when you use the code SHR.
Everybody's moving, everybody's grooving, baby.
Welcome back. The book is Missing Microbes. You can get it by going to my blog today at superhumanradio.com. How the overuse of antibiotics is fueling our modern plagues. Is plagues too strong of a word, Dr. Blaser?
No, I don't think so. You read the newspapers, you go to just about any household in the United States, and there is somebody who's affected by obesity, diabetes, juvenile diabetes, celiac disease, food allergies, asthma, autism. These are all the big problems that are troubling us now.
Diseases of modernity that can, in one way or another, can be linked back in one way or another to some of the prevalence of antibiotics. What about the fact that 2/3 of all the antibiotics produced today are given to animals, and even if you don't take antibiotics, you're getting it in the food?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. We don't really know the significance of it. It's never been really studied. We know, as you said, that 2/3, maybe as much as 80% of all the antibiotics by weight are going to farm animals to fatten them up. And they're supposed to wash out the antibiotics before the food goes to market. But there have been surveys done in supermarkets that show that there are residues of antibiotics in meat, in chicken, in milk.
Well, that's the most absurd. If you apply critical thinking, if you have any critical thinking skills at all, that's the most absurd statement in the world. We wash out the antibiotics. It's in the flesh of the animal. How do you wash out? Do you open each cell up and wash the protoplasm out of it?
Well, there's a degree. A lot of the antibiotics are in the intestinal tract, and if you stop the antibiotics over time, they decay. I mean, in theory, it could happen. In reality, there are enough violations that surveys in supermarkets are showing that a lot of the meats and milk as well that children are getting have trace amounts of antibiotics. In some communities, their water supply intake is downstream of the effluent from these industrial farms. So nobody has really done a study to measure what's the effect of all these trace levels of antibiotics that millions, tens of millions of people are being exposed to every day. We don't know. Maybe it's trivial. Maybe it's important. We just don't know.
Well, and the fact that farmers use antibiotics with both an intrinsic and extrinsic value to animal husbandry, and that is, the first is obviously to keep these animals that are borderline sick from getting full-blown sick. But the second is that it causes animals to fatten up faster. So why wouldn't it do that to humans?
Well, yes, of course. But let me just say that the levels of antibiotics that are used on the farm are sub-therapeutic levels. They're very low doses. Their whole purpose is to promote growth. They're growth promoters. It's not to keep them healthy. Farmers in industrial agriculture have used that excuse that they're keeping the animals healthy. They've used that excuse for a long time. But then they would use therapeutic doses. These are sub-therapeutic doses. Their purpose is to enhance growth, which makes it cheaper to produce meat, and that's where a lot of the profit is.
What about diseases like GERD, right? The Nexium is one of the most popular pills, the little purple pill. Is there any evidence that antibiotics could be linked to the development of this type of acid reflux syndrome?
There is, but that's not the main point. It's part of it, and that's in part what Missing Microbes is about, because it turns out that there's a bacteria that lives in the human stomach called Helicobacter pylori. That's a long name. We call it HP for short.
Right.
And as far as we can tell, we humans have been carrying this organism ever since we were humans, going back at least 200,000 years, probably much longer than that, even before then. And over the course of the 20th century, this organism has been disappearing. It began in the early 20th century, and it's really continued. So today, less than 6% of children in the United States have this ancient organism that we all used to have. And so then the question is, what are the consequences of the loss of this organism? And some of the consequences are good. There are less stomach ulcers, and there's less stomach cancer. And both of these have been linked to the bacteria, so that's very good news. But there is more GERD and more problems of the esophagus, reflux esophagitis. That's the other name for GERD. It's skyrocketing. And there's more and more evidence that it is the loss of this ancient natural organism that is associated with the rise in GERD and other esophageal diseases.
Okay, recently we did a show about the discovery of a lactic acid microbe called Lactobacillus rotari, which has been linked to almost anti-aging-like effects in rats. It's found in mother's milk, but it's also babies get it sometimes when they're passing through the mother's vaginal canal during vaginal birth. When you take this into account that we have a lot of C-section babies and a lot of babies out there that aren't being breastfed, and then you compound this with the introduction of antimicrobials, antibacterials, and these antibiotics, these babies really are starting out. I know that when they do research with rats that don't have an immune system, they have no microbiome, these animals are susceptible to everything, right?
Yeah, but let's go back to the C-sections, because you raised a very important point. About 100 years ago, C-sections came into being with anesthesia, et cetera, because in the old days, the C-section goes back 2,000 years, but the mother would always die. So the baby might live, but the mother would die. But 100 years ago or so, then the surgery was perfected, and now both mother and baby live. And that was a huge advance. And, for decades, the rate of C-section was 5% or 10%. In Scandinavia today, in most countries, it's around 10%. In the U.S. 20 years ago, it was 18%. Today, it's 32%. 1 out of every 3 babies is born by C-section in the U.S.
And quite often, it's not even a rescue attempt where the baby is
that's right.
They go, hey, you want to come? Yeah, you want to come in Wednesday morning for your baby? Okay, we make an appointment.
Right.
We give you a C-section.
Again, it's all based on the idea that nobody thinks that there's any biological cost to this, and there's a lot of convenience for mothers, for doctors, for hospitals, but the most important study that was done on this was actually done by my wife, Maria Gloria Dominguez. She and Rob Knight did a study of women whose babies were born by C-section or vaginally, and they asked what's going on in the microbiome. And the microbiome of the baby born vaginally looks like the mother's vagina. That's not surprising because the baby came through the birth canal. And that's the way mammals have been doing it for 100 million years. But the babies born by C-section, their microbiome looked like skin. And it wasn't even necessarily the mother's skin. It could have been anybody's skin in the operating room or anybody from there. So from the moment of birth, the microbiome is different. And so the baby is starting off life with a different foundation. And there have been studies already that have shown that kids born by C-section are more likely to become obese, to develop juvenile diabetes, to develop celiac disease. So this change in the microbiome early, it looks very likely that that's having a cost.
In Dr. Daniel Lieberman's book, The Story of the Human Body, he talks about the ebb of the microbiome being the reason for so many allergies today, because we had this robust microbiota in the body. According to a discussion I had many, many years ago with Leslie Aiello when she was still with the Wenner-Gren Foundation, it's suspected that hunter-gatherers have something as diverse as 22,000 different types of microbes in their gut, and we modern civilized humans have maybe 2,000. And I could be off on these numbers dramatically.
Those numbers aren't quite right. But the point is that they have a lot more microbes than we do. And we know this from current studies, again, that my wife and others are doing, suggesting that our microbiome is down by 15% to 40%. That's the current work, and some very recent work suggests it may even be more. It's not down 90%, but still 40%, that is really big. We've lost close to half of our ancestral microbiota. And that's when we saw the decrease in Helicobacter, we said, okay, that organism is disappearing. It's likely that others are disappearing as well. And now we're finding the evidence that that is true.
Well, is there a linkage to the fact that by having this diminishing diversity is actually leading to the allergies that we see, the asthma in children and so on?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the whole premise. That's why I called the book Missing Microbes. We're missing the microbes that we've had since forever, and that has consequence.
Okay. We have to take a commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about what can be done about this. We're talking right now with Dr. Martin Blaser. It's a fantastic book. If you work with individuals, if you are a personal trainer, a life coach, anything like that, you have to read this book, because it will give you a lot of good information that can help you help your clients. If you're a clinician, this is a must-read. And if you're somebody who suffers from an autoimmune disorder, rheumatoid arthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, and so on, this is a must-read for you, too. Because, really, we don't give enough credit. We're just now paying attention to this. I think it's estimated at 4 or 6 pounds of microbes that live inside the body that actually is the immune system. The greatest example of the immune system in action is the fact that you can eat a piece of animal flesh, extract everything that is good about it, and excrete the rest. That is an example of your immune system at work. Stay tuned. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR20. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/Delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SH. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge Fudge Sundae. Go to SHR Network. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest-running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the superhuman nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today. That's DAN.KOPITZK. Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're talking right now with Dr. Martin Blaser about his new book, Missing Microbes, how the overuse of antibiotics is fueling our modern plagues. So, Dr. Blaser, if someone who has been exposed to antibiotics wanted to do something, is there a way to reseed, to increase the diversity, to kind of improve the microbiota of the gut?
Well, you ask a key question. This is what we're working on, and many other people are working on it as well. What I can tell you is that if you go to the health food store or the grocery store or the drugstore, you see shelves and shelves with items labeled as probiotics. And what I can say about those probiotics is that they're generally safe. They've almost completely not been tested, and they have all different. You may see the same bacteria with many different labels. They're all different kinds of combinations. So I don't know which of those work at all. And they're only single organisms or two or three organisms. If we're losing diversity, if we're losing hundreds of species, it's not clear to me how ingesting those organisms, which often come from cows or from cheese, are really going to help us. We need to develop probiotics, but I think we're still in the research stage.
Yeah. I have this suspicion. If we go back to look at the old Amish gut study that we talked about some time ago on the show, that the individuals who worked with animals had a much more diverse microbiome than even the women who didn't work with animals. We are not being exposed to things because we are so germ-phobic today that could be benefiting us. Now, I am not suggesting what I'm about to talk about next.
Well, let me just come back to before
please.
That, and that is, your point. The germophobia is so prevalent. Again, part of it is that there were terrible germs out there. There still are terrible germs that kill people, but not all microbes and not all bacteria are bad for us. Actually, most of them are neutral or actually good for us. The bacteria in our body are good for us, and we're subjecting them to antibacterial soaps and hand sanitizers. And I'm afraid that we're getting rid of good bacteria inadvertently, and I wonder whether we're doing more good or more harm.
Well, so we did a show. I don't know. I think it was earlier in this year or late last year, and again, I'm saying this again. I'm not suggesting people do this, but just looking at the ancestral use of geophagy, eating dirt. We know that in hunter-gatherer nations, women would eat dirt. Pregnant women would eat dirt. We know that little children eat dirt. We see this in animals, too. In fact, I live in Kentucky, and they have two areas here in Kentucky. One is called Pope Lick, and one is called Big Bone Lick. And they are named that because the animals come out of the mountains to lick the ground. Now, some people...
They're licking for salt.
Salt. I was going to say they're licking for salt, but they're getting other minerals, too. They're getting other things, too, with that salt. We've done shows where people who garden and work in... I don't mean commercial farming now, because that's different. But people who garden and work with soil, they tend to have more robust microbiomes. They tend to have a greater sense of well-being. They tend to suffer less from depression. So I guess what I'm getting back at is... go ahead, I'm sorry, please.
I want to say, you're right. Gardening is terrific, but I'm not sure that that's the reason it's terrific. Actually, I go into this in Missing Microbes because... this idea about eating dirt is good for you. Personally, I don't think it's good or bad. It's neutral. It's indifferent. Because when you eat dirt, the bacteria there are adapted for living in soil. That's their home. not the human body. What I'm concerned about is the bacteria that are our ancient bacteria, the ones that we have lost. Those are the ones we have to replace.
Where can we find them?
Well, my wife and others have been traveling, working in the Amazon and places where we're going to places where people have had few or no antibiotics, so that we can sample the original specimens so that we can find these ancient organisms that we've already lost. And there's evidence that they have organisms that we've lost, just as you had mentioned earlier.
I predict a time in the future. Now, people are going to go, ew, Carl, you're crazy. But I predict a time in the future where we will be harvesting either fecal matter and decontaminating it, for lack of better terms, and encapsulating it so that people can get these microbes or some other form to harvest from these individuals. Because where else can we get this without? We already do fecal implants in people, right? We're doing fecal implants.
But I think we can clean it up a lot. I think that just, when you go to the health food store and you take a probiotic, so-called probiotic pill, that's a purified bacteria. When you eat yogurt, those are solutions of purified bacteria. So we'll be able to figure out what are those disappeared ancient bacteria, and I predicted actually about 15 years ago that we'll start giving them back to kids. Just like today, kids are lining up to get their vaccinations to protect them. We're gonna give them back the bacteria that modern civilization has taken away from them.
That's a wonderful idea.
And they can start life on a good plane, the way their ancestors did.
The other thing that I talk about with probiotics that I've said before on the show, some people take a capsule of a probiotic, and that's akin to throwing a handful of grass seed on an acre of land and expecting it to cover the whole acre of land. The doses, like I buy a medical grade food called VSL number 3, and I buy it in the over-the-counter 450 billion CFUs. It's 8 non-overlapping, non-competing lactic acid bacteria forms. But I take 2 to 3 pouches of that when I take it, because I kind of feel like, what good is taking a couple billion of some probiotic? That's not going to do anything to my gut. Am I wrong about that?
Well, certainly the numbers matter, but again, I would argue that the time that you needed those lactobacilli, were in your first 6 months of life, when you were really young. Those are the bacteria that we get from our mothers, from our vagina. When the baby's born, they swallowing the organisms, they inoculate the nipple, and so now when the mom is breastfeeding, she's bringing in milk plus lactobacilli. This is exactly how nature has choreographed it, and that becomes the foundation. It's like you're building a big structure. You have to have a solid foundation. That's the foundation on which we're all built on in health. And so those bacteria are extremely important in early life. What's their role when you're an adult? I don't know. It hasn't really been tested.
But I know that I lost some of those bacteria when I took that sulfur-based or that penicillin-based amoxicillin. I feel like I've replenished them over the past 4 years by rigorously and methodically consuming large amounts of probiotics and other things that seem to help build up the mucosal lining of the stomach and so on, because my stomach is back to normal again. So there should be some value later on in life, especially if you had them and you lost them.
Well, I'm a scientist, and it's hard for me to make conclusions from your experiment because a lot of other things happened in your life at the same time. So that's a lot of reasons why we try to study mice, because we can control the situation very carefully and feed them exactly what we want or not, and then we can make observations before, during, and after, so that we can reach good conclusions. And mice turn out to be a lot like people.
What happens when someone has to take an antibiotic? Should they take a probiotic with it, or what can they do? In Missing Microbes, I predict that we're going to be doing that regularly, except that I can't tell you what the probiotic is yet, because we don't know. Otherwise, right now we're just guessing, and I don't know whether any of those probiotics that are available are the right one
at all. But you raise another interesting point, which I'd like to discuss to your listeners, and that is that the antibiotics we use, like the amoxicillin you took, is what's called a broad-spectrum antibiotic. It's affecting everything. It's trying to kill the bad guy, but in the course of it, it's also killing a lot of good guys. It has a lot of collateral damage. And for the last 50 years, the whole direction has been to make broad-spectrum antibiotics. But I think in the future, we're going to have to develop narrow-spectrum antibiotics, very precise drugs, so that if somebody has an abscess, that we'll have the diagnostic test and it will say that's bacteria X, and now we're going to pull off the shelf antibiotic for X that works like a laser, that just is attacking that bad guy and will not have any effects on the good guys. I think that's where medicine's going to be going, but there's a lot of development that has to be done to get us there.
Well, and that speaks to something that I questioned when this happened to me with my tooth. It's like, why aren't we using more topical antibiotics for localized delivery as opposed to this dose that is fed to the whole body for something that's in my jaw?
Yeah. Well, you raise a good point. One of the problems with topical is, like, if you put it on your skin. Let's just say you have a skin abscess.
Right.
It's affecting the superficial area, but it may not be affecting the deep area, which is the one you really want to affect. It's got to come in through the bloodstream.
Even if it's in a vehicle, like a transdermal vehicle, which we know is going to then get picked up by the small blood vessels in the.
It's possible. It's possible. It just depends on how good the delivery is.
Yeah.
But my focus is to make the spectrum narrower, so it's just targeting.
Dr. Blaser, who did you write this book for? Did you write it for people? Did you write it for clinicians? Did you write it for both?
Carl, I wrote this for people. I'm a doctor. I'm a scientist. I've been talking about my work to doctors and scientists for the last few years, but the goal was to get the message out to the broader group of people so they can understand really what we're up against. And in part, the frontier, just as you said, is in the doctor's office. You know, many times parents take their kids to the doctor, and if the doctor says, "Oh, your child is well, they don't need an antibiotic," the parent feels deprived. And whereas I think they should feel elated that the doctor has done a careful exam and said, okay, this is a mild illness. We're much better off without the antibiotic. So I want to change the dialogue. I think we're near a tipping point, and I'd like to change the dialogue so that we understand that antibiotics have cost as well as benefit, and so we have to be much more judicious in their use.
What about for the parent who is concerned and the doctor wants to prescribe an antibiotic? Obviously, the parent is not equipped to challenge the doctor. Are there certain questions a parent can ask to truly ascertain if an antibiotic is the right thing to do for this child at this moment?
Well, you know, even though I've written this book for ordinary people, I'm hoping that doctors and the medical societies will be reading it too. And I'm lecturing at different meetings of pediatricians and internists and family doctors. So I'm trying to get the message out. And, you know, one of the things I do in the book is that I contrast our use of antibiotics in the U.S. to the use in Sweden. In the U.S., the average child has gotten 4 courses of antibiotics by the time they're 3. That's across all the kids in the United States. By the time they're 10, they've had 10 courses, and by the time they're 20, they've had 17 courses. Now, in contrast, in Sweden, where the people are at least as healthy as we are, by the age of 10, the average child has had 4 courses against our 10. And at every age, the Swedes are using about 40% of the antibiotics we're using. That means that 60% are unneeded. So I'm trying to get that message out, too, and ask the doctors, you know, if the doctors didn't feel pressured by the people, they could get their backs down also. But I'm trying to. I'm saying we should spend more money on pediatricians so they don't have to see patients every 8 minutes, so that they can really do a careful exam and assess this child is really sick. This child must get an antibiotic. It would be a real mistake if it didn't. And this child isn't too bad right now, with no time and no opportunity for careful exams. You know, almost everybody's getting a prescription.
Yeah. Great book, by the way. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. Oh, wait, you are going to be appearing someplace at Secret Science Club. Talk about that real quick, May 20th.
Well, New York City has a great institution called the Secret Science Club. It's held in a bar in Brooklyn. It has a capacity of about 400 or 500 people. I was there about a year ago. The place was packed, and people were interested in science. And I'm going back there May 20th. I'm going to tell people about my work and hopefully sign a lot lot of books.
What's the name of the bar?
The bar is called the Bell House, and it's in Brooklyn, and the Secret Science Club meets there about once a month on a Tuesday night.
So you'll be there May 20th talking about this.
Yes.
Excellent book. Thank you for being on the show today, Dr. Blaser.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.